How's it going?
Good.
Yeah, good to see you.
Always good.
Hello.
Have a good day.
Yes. Very productive.
It's always good one.
Yeah, charitable.
And charitable.
Charitable. You're not coming into Campbell. It's gonna be working, but other meeting or something.
Yeah, I heard that. I've been thinking about it, but I hadn't made any decision yet. You're going.
I was there yesterday, as a matter of fact, just to check it out.
And it looks good.
Looks pretty good.
Can use the water.
Absolutely.
Chega perto e olhando.
Então eu faço a ajoelhinha e olhar que eu
Welcome everyone. Good to see you all here today on this
Likewise.
Sunday. Thank you. Starting with an announcement on Friday, this upcoming Friday on the 24th, we'll be here in the evening at 7 p.m. to watch a movie. And it's a movie from Victor Del Nero, which is a movie about his life. He was a very prominent Spiritist in Brazil, and you know that even after he passed on, he still looks after our country quite a bit and the Spiritist movement. So this sheds a bit of a light on how his life was, and it's always a good time to be here together to watch the movie, and then we talk about it and reflect. So yeah, hope we can see you all here on Friday at 7. If you could let us know you're coming, I don't know if we're... Yeah, if you could let us know whether or not you're coming, that'd be great, so we can set up the rooms appropriately. And our talk today is about knowledge and feelings. Before we start, as usual, we're going to read a text just to ground ourselves a little bit. And it's a text from a book from Emmanuel, from Chico Xavier. And the title of the book, it's called Messages from Life, or Recados da Vida. And the title of the text is called The Two Faces of Progress, or in Portuguese, Progresso Face Duplo. And he says that undeniably humanity has already accomplished wonders in what is called outward progress. It investigates outer space. However, it rarely learns how to walk the path of communication with its own neighbors. It recognizes the imperatives of peace and dedicates precious monuments to it. But it is almost always ready to sustain conflicts that end under the terrible shadow of war. It has invented admirable ways of enlightening the intellect. Nevertheless, it still faces serious difficulties in teaching or elevating the realms of feelings. It erects skyscrapers and collective housing complexes, yet it usually ignores how to unite people without distinction of races or creeds. It created steel, which guarantees the efficiency of its constructions. However, it faces great obstacles in maintaining the necessary continuity of inner security. It organizes associations of various kinds for the defense of community interests. Nevertheless, loneliness on earth is an increasing scourge. It highlights the importance of fraternity and emphasizes human solidarity. But violence continues to advance throughout the world. This is the double face of progress among humanity. Outwardly, wonders of reasoning and achievements of intellectual culture. Inwardly, however, it reveals the wound of hatred and selfishness that only the living practice of the teachings of Jesus Christ will be able to heal. So let us join our hearts together in a quick prayer. In this moment, I'm taking a deep breath, elevating our thoughts to our guardian angels, to the mentors that are here, and to our Master Jesus. We ask, Master, your help in guiding our thoughts, in guiding our feelings, so we can be open to our talk today, and so you can inspire us to extract the most from your teachings and be able to apply them in our own lives. We thank you for the opportunity to be here together with friends in communion with God. We thank you for the space, and we thank everyone for choosing to be here. Master, may your love continue to surround us with peace and harmony. So be it.
So beautiful.
Thank you. So this introductory text from Emmanuel, if you paid attention, it is very good. And it talks exactly about what we'll be talking about here today, which is from knowledge to feeling. And we seem to be very good at acquiring knowledge. We have so many books that we read. Nowadays, even more. We have access to so much information, be it through books that we might not like to read. Now we have audiobooks, so we can, acquire knowledge that way. We have podcasts, we have videos on the internet. There's just so much knowledge that we can acquire, and we seem to be more and more thirsty for it. But today we'll be talking about what are we doing with that knowledge that we long to acquire, but sometimes we forget to actually bring it to our lives, to bring it to our feelings. And I wonder, why do we choose to acquire so much knowledge and perhaps disregard a little bit of our feelings? Why do you think we choose to just keep on this road of knowledge acquisition?
It's easier.
It's easy. Exactly. Especially nowadays, it's so easy, right? It's right here. I have the whole world of knowledge. I don't even have to drive to a library. It's right here. And Amazon, for example, is just telling me something. So I'm just gonna turn it off.
The information never stops.
It never stops. It never stops. So, and perhaps not only is it easier to acquire knowledge, but perhaps we don't give enough importance to our feelings because we don't think they're important. Because feelings are something to the side, that we leave it to the side, or it's just an automatic response. I can't control it. We'll just leave it as is. So this is what we'll talk about today. And when we think about is feelings, our feelings important? Is it something we should even talk about and focus on? I don't know if you remember, we've talked about this before. When we look at the attributes of our spirit, so what are the main characteristics of our own spirit? And we bring three main points. There's three main characteristics of our spirit. Our spirits are comprised of thoughts. They're also comprised of feelings. And they're also comprised of our will. So we have our thoughts, allows us to reflect. We have our feelings that allow us to feel, which is somewhat the interpretation of our thoughts. And then our will, ou a nossa vontade, that's what makes us do things. That's what makes us take the thoughts, take the feelings, and actually action, create something, do something. And so these are the main attributes of our spirits. So we can see that just as important as we have thoughts, we have feelings. So how much time do we spend, again, acquiring knowledge, and how much time do we spend looking after our feelings, reflecting upon our feelings, trying to learn more about our feelings? For example, we usually know the patient. We love to bring the topic about patience. We know that a lot of us have some patience that we need to develop. Right, that's one of the virtues that we sometimes struggle with. Be it in the family, be it with kids, be it at work, be it in traffic. There's so many aspects of our lives that invite us to develop our patience. But even though we know about it, how much work do we do to actually develop it? Right? Or every time our patience is being tested, we just completely forget about that virtue and just let our ego take the best of us, and we scream, we yell, or in traffic, we scream or yell, or with our family, we don't forgive, and so on. So how much do we know we should be developing something, and how much do we actually use our will, a nossa vontade, right, to develop that? And it doesn't only have to be with patience. There's so many other things we can talk about. For example, courage. How many times I know, I need to develop some courage. Again, family, at work. But when the opportunity comes for me to, for example, speak up, I let my insecurities take the best of me and I just stay quiet. The other one is, for example, our diligence, our discipline to do things, to act. And yet, a lot of times, we let our laziness take the best of us, and we just don't do anything. So, these are all feelings, right, that tend to take over our actions. And the question is, who controls them? Right? Why is it that when our patience is being tested, we lash out? And from an outward perspective, it might feel that we lose control. Why? So who controls them? Why are we losing control of our reactions? Why aren't we a little bit more in control of our feelings? Any thoughts?
Our unconscious mind sometimes controls how we react.
And then we can say, if we realize that we control them, we know that to develop any sort of skill, we need to practice, right? So if we don't practice controlling them, they'll end up controlling us, right? So our lack of the ability to control our actions will result in us behaving in a way that we perhaps don't think is how we should, but that's how we let ourselves be. And we'll talk quite a bit about this, and in the end I'll show a video to kind of highlight a little bit more what we're talking about. So I'm going to bring a couple passages from some books in Spiritism to help us bring more context to this. The first one being, like we've been talking, right? We talk about the skills of our minds so much, especially at work or in family, but hardly ever do we talk about the skills of our hearts. We talk a lot about our intelligence, but the emotional intelligence piece, we sometimes leave it to the side. So, how many times do we have, or how many times do we struggle with controlling our feelings? And this could be, again, like we said, lashing out, but it could be compounding to the point where, and this is increasingly happening to a lot of us, right? Episodes of rage, passages of panic attacks or anxiety attacks or depression, right? These are all things when we cannot control our feelings. So that's why.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, please. That's why
I
we're talking
think
about it.
too, like in Western society, we as a group, we never gave too much attention to our emotions. Like in other societies, if you go to has more history. If you go to India, if you go to Asian societies, emotions or feelings were always or at least you attempt to integrate a little bit more. Now, the way I see that, hopefully I'm right, is that there is a shift. There are more and more people trying to focus and pay attention to those little monsters, which are our emotions. If you don't tame them, if you don't pay attention to them, they can really take the driver's seat and take over. And that makes me remember, I don't know if adults without kids, if you watch that, but if not, I recommend Disney movies approach that with the Inside Out. There is the number 1 and the number 2.
Yeah.
And it's I like the Inside Out 2 a lot because it's when the little girl is becoming a teenager and how other emotions that were not there when the girl was younger just comes and arise and she doesn't know what to do with it. And one of them is anxiety, even though today you'll see little kids struggling with anxiety, but then it shows in a very playful manner what happens and how it operates in one's brain if you just don't pay attention, don't integrate, right? So I think now, even I've worked in school for a while, they talk a lot about social emotional learning or emotional intelligence and try to incorporate and make kids aware and be able to talk or to identify feelings and triggers, which is I think it brings hope because all the science now is talking a lot and bringing research and results depressed people live less, and not because they commit suicide, that's true, but it's just because the impact of emotions in how your body operates. So there is now it's becoming common sense in a way, or hopefully it will be, and people are more paying attention and saying, no, it impacts me, or and even in the day-to-day narrative, oh, I got sick because I was my immune system went down, I was a little bit down, and then you see that it is indeed people are aware or becoming aware of that.
Thank you. That's really good to hear. That this is very current. Then right? It's bringing into light the importance of working through our feelings that we might have neglected for so long, and as the pressure cooker, eventually it bursts. So much so that Emmanuel in the book Vine of Light, he brings us a passage when he says it is urgent, and Emmanuel doesn't use strong words like this as often, like never or always or urgent. But in this one he does. He says it is urgent to recognize that in the feelings lies the control of life. So it's not in our thoughts that the control of our lives are or lie, but it's in our feelings. So it's by understanding our feelings, by recognizing them, by working through our feelings that we can finally get some control of our lives. And it can be a very impactful sentence when you start to realize how much time we've spent acquiring that knowledge, like I said, versus bringing them to our feelings or educate our feelings. We've really got to educate our minds. How about educating our feelings?
And I think that speaks to what you were saying, or that chart you presented before about the will and the thought and feeling. Because when you placed on a triangle, there's a semblance that, you know, thought and feeling are on equal footing, but just as this reference to Emmanuel draws clear, it seems that, and even neuropsychology, which probably you can speak to much more, it speaks to this idea that it's really the surface is our feelings. Our feelings determine everything else. It determines all of the thoughts that we are going to generate and how we are going to engage. And so when we look at it from the perspective of, you know, we think something and then we want to change it, well, there's already an underlying feeling there that is controlling the very thought that was generated in the first place. So it can seem counterintuitive, but really addressing the feeling will address both the feeling and the thought. But even when you try to address the thought, you may not at all. You may address the thought in the moment, but if you don't address the underlying feeling, you're just going to end up in the same cycle that you were if you have thoughts that you prefer would change or different approaches. And then the will, to your point, which guides the whole thing, it seems to be more of a, rather than, it seems to be more of a sequence that comes from our feelings that then leads out to the rest.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Isela. Yeah. And yeah, just to illustrate a little bit more, the thought and the feeling, they go hand in hand, because it becomes a self-fulfilling or a self-sufficient cycle where you learn a little bit more with our thoughts, then we apply them to our feelings, and so on and so forth, right? So one helps the other evolve. And so, when we're talking about struggling with our feelings, one of the first things that we think about is, perhaps I should go to therapy. Perhaps I should go to a psychologist, which is an amazing thing to do, right? We're seeking out help. We're identifying that need. And if we were to think about Spiritism, does Spiritism talk about psychology? Does Spiritism talk about our feelings?
Yes.
It does, right? Sometimes I do get asked questions when we talk here about guilt, when we talk about the ego, when we talk about depression, when we talk about rage, or so on and so forth. Sometimes I get asked the question, Spiritism talks about those feelings? I thought that's more of like a psychology thing. I thought Spiritism was just focused more on talking about, you know, Jesus or something else. And then it's really interesting to realize that here we have the main books from Kardec. There are 5 of them, right? They're like the core of the Spiritist doctrine. But Kardec also has, here we don't have all of them, but there are 11 books that compose what we call Revista Espírita, or the Spiritist Review, I think it's called. I wrote it down. The Spiritist Review. That's the title, Revista Espírita, Spiritist Review. The subtitle is Jornal de Estudos Psicológicos, or Journal of Psychological Studies. So psychology is actually very present in Spiritism from the beginning, right? So much so that there's more books about this than the other ones.
And truth to be told, like if we lived a little bit more like Jesus, we wouldn't need psychologists. Like,
He was the master in psychology.
Yes, versus
Exactly.
psychotherapist. So psychologists would be outdated in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it will be eventually.
So we can see that there's actually a lot about psychology and a lot about feelings. It's the study of feelings in Spiritism. So much so that if we were to think about the word psychology, in the past, when it was created, it means the study of the psyche. And the psyche means, used to, at least in the past, it used to mean the breath of air that brings life to a body, which, as we know, is the spirit, right? So psychology back in the day used to mean the study of the spirit. It has since, once it became its own science path, it has changed to the study of the mind. Perhaps now it's more the study of the mind and the heart and the feelings, so it's maybe somewhat changing a bit. But it's interesting to realize that originally it was the study of the spirit. And as we said, spirit is comprised of feelings, thoughts, and will. So, just to illustrate another passage from Emmanuel before we dive into some specifics around feelings, just to reiterate once more, and this is something that we read in the text in the beginning, is that sometimes we get too caught up in the intellect because, like you guys said, it's somewhat easier to grasp, it's easier to acquire. So it's interesting how nowadays we have the ability to think about traveling to Mars, right? Going to a whole other planet. We've already been to the moon. We have so much knowledge and so much technology. Our intellect and our material things have grown so much. Yet, we still struggle with having a good relationship with our neighbors, a good relationship with our family members. So how does that work? Right? We've been able to advance to the point of interplanetary travel, but when it comes to having a relationship with that person next to us, we still struggle. Right? That's, again, talking about the intellectual versus the moral improvement and which one we have paid more attention to. Likely because like we discussed, the intellect is a little easier to do, whereas the feelings require a little bit more work.
Well, bluntly putting, I would say that emotions requires far more effort to understand and master than intellect. I mean, knowledge, you can acquire, you follow it, you try once, twice, thrice, until it works out. Whereas emotions, let alone the fact that only 5% or 10% of our objective mind is aware of our emotions. Whereas 90% is hidden. It requires more effort to unveil it.
Yeah, our brains, absolutely. Yes. And so it takes effort, like you mentioned, right? And as we'll see, it's an effort that we should be asking ourselves, are we doing? Is it an effort that we're doing? Emmanuel says, he highlights to us, he says, in Spiritist circles, much has been said about reason faith. So in Spiritism, we talk a lot about FSS, right? Or that faith that we can reason, that through the study of all these books, of all the studies that we have, we can reflect it and we can bring a lot of reason to our faith, right? So we understand it, makes sense. But rarely about enlightened reason, meaning bringing all these things that we're studying about to enlightenment. Enlightenment, we can think about it as bringing that to the feeling, which is what brings the life force in us.
Do you mean like using the reason faith to help to enlighten us?
Yeah, because otherwise our reason becomes not enlightened. And Jesus, once he said, watch, so that the light that you have in you doesn't become darkness. In the sense that all the knowledge that you have, watch it, use it for good, use it to transform your feelings. Because if you don't, it will become darkness. Right? If you don't use the knowledge that you have to discipline, to transform your feelings will take over. Right? So there's a lot that we talk about, a lot that we focus on. The study. Now, are we taking that study and applying it to our feelings? That's why the title of the talk is From Knowledge to Feelings. So let's see what Spiritism has to say, especially Kardec, in that book, the middle one over there, The Gospel According to Spiritism. This is a chapter called Chapter 17, and the title is Be Perfect. And there are two texts in that chapter that are one of the most famous ones from that book, or even in Spiritism. One of them is O Homem de Bem, or the good person, and the second one, I forgot in Portuguese, but it's the good Spiritist, Bom Espírito. Yeah. So we're going to talk about both of them and see what Kardec says about this. He says the true good person, so O Homem de Bem, the true good person is the one who fulfills the law of justice, love, and charity in its greatest purity. So is it learning about the divine laws, understanding what is the law of justice, what is the law of love, what is the law of charity? Fulfilling goes beyond just knowing it, right? Fulfilling a law means you're practicing that law. You're putting it to practice, right? So you're choosing to practice it. And I love this passage. It says, the good person, if they examine their conscience regarding their own actions, they're asking themselves whether is if, right? If I have violated that law, whether I have done any evil, whether I have done all the good that I could, whether I have voluntarily neglected an opportunity to be useful, whether anyone has any legitimate complaint against me. In short, if I've done to others what I wish others would do unto me. So the good person in this text that Kardec brings to us does a lot of self-examination. It reflects upon their actions a lot, starting with examining their conscience regarding their own actions. There's a question in the Spirit's book that again is very famous that talks a little bit about this. Anyone remember what that question is? We talked about it last week. It's good. It wakes people up.
It brings joy to the meeting.
Yes. So yeah, do you remember which question in the Spirit's book talks about this? We talked about it last week. Towards the end, it's actually the last question of the section 3 of the book. So it's the last question we'll talk about the divine laws. Okay.
What is the question again? Your question.
What's the question that talks about the importance of examining our conscience?
919.
Yeah, exactly. What you think?
Oh,
Right, it's that famous question.
It doesn't mean that I practiced it.
Oh,
I remember every single night, but I still didn't practice. I need to get better.
Nice, Mike, because that was exactly my next question. It's a very famous question. A lot of us perhaps don't know the number, but know it exists. But how many of us actually did this last night?
Yeah.
Right? How many of us actually practiced it? Then yeah, it is question 919, and asked, what is the most practical or efficient way for men to improve? It's a very simple question. And the answer is know thyself, right? Is this act of reflection, to be more self-aware, to understand a little bit more about ourselves. And that is reviewing a lot of the feelings. What are the feelings that I had throughout my day? What are the actions that I did throughout the day? And depending on the state of mind that we are, that could take us down a, how can I say, a feeling that will bring us down. If we start to reflect and see that, oh, I didn't do this right, and that right, and that right, and that right. We might-
Frustration.
Yeah, it can bring us a little bit of frustration. Interestingly enough, on the third line, he says, in this reflection, whether or not I have done all the good that I could, not all the good. So in this reflection, we're not reflecting about our actions, thinking that we should have been the most patient person on earth, that we have achieved that 100% patience. If I haven't, then I'm there criticizing myself.
And I think like
Yeah.
it brings a lot of responsibility to
Mhm.
us, like to whoever is studying and getting the knowledge, because it's not enough not to do harm. Like we are way past that. It's about taking an active stance. It's doing good. Doing no harm, like it's easy. That's it.
It's a lot
Right?
easier.
Easier,
Yeah.
not easy because sometimes we do that too.
Yeah.
But it's like the expectations to go above and beyond that. You do at your capacity, at the limit of your
Exactly,
capacity.
exactly. It's the do what we could, because sometimes we, when we reflect about our actions, we're comparing ourselves against, sometimes Jesus, for example, and that can bring us down, right? Well, I wasn't as patient as Jesus. But perhaps, and this is an important sentence here, we study our own imperfections and we work tirelessly, like Jules said, to overcome them. Every effort is directed toward being able to say on the following day that we have become a little bit better than what we were the day before. So in this self-reflection exercise, right, it's not about comparing what I did to what it would be to have 100% patience, for example, but was my patience today better than yesterday? Just a little bit better, just a tiny little bit, but was it better? Right, that's what the good person does, right? He's not saying that the good person here is the one that is the incarnation of, or it's a pure spirit, but he's saying the good person is the one that reflects upon their actions and judges or evaluates whether or not they've improved a tiny little bit from the day.
It's a 37 times improvement in a year.
Yeah.
They're always saying that because I work with
Not that bad.
continuous
Nice.
improvement. 1% every day is 37 times more in a year.
There you
Makes a
go.
lot of efforts.
Exactly.
Made of progress.
Thank you. And
I love that.
actually, as you're saying that, sometimes we self-sabotage ourselves when we're doing this. And we realize where we are, and I'm using patience because I think patience is the thing that everyone can relate to it. Sometimes we realize where we are with our patience, and we see, how much patience Francis of Assisi or Jesus or Sheep Xavier had, and we see that as being a big, big mountain, and we're down below. That incremental aspect, or the review with this mindset, will show us the same mountain, but the slope won't be like this, but it'll be like this, right? So it's a lot easier to climb a slow and small slope than perceiving that mountain as right here in front of us that we have to jump, right? So that's the difference between that incremental effort that we talked about. That incremental effort doesn't make us lose hope. It's like, oh, I'm hopeless. You know, it's really hard to be as patient as Francis of Assisi. Well, this tells us a different story. And so the next text right after that one is the good spiritist. So we talked about the good man or the good person, and now it's on to the good spiritist. And I love this first sentence. It says, properly understood and above all, deeply felt. Spiritism leads to the results described above. So all the results in the text that I read before, it's a lot bigger. I just didn't read it all. But he said that for us to achieve all these things that we said before, Spiritism needs to be deeply felt. Yes, it'll be properly understood through our studies, through our reflections, but above all, it should be deeply felt. And that is what will make us transform ourselves. That is what will make us be better people.
Victor, I like what I was watching a talk from Haroldo, and say, yeah, if like we just asked question, oh, which question is that talks about this? Oh, it's 919. Oh, is that 115? Oh, that's understanding. That doesn't good, awesome that you memorize, but you just memorize it. You just blah,
Exactly.
right? But it's about feeling and what it means.
Exactly. So how much time are we focusing on that, on understanding? And how much time are we focusing on taking that knowledge and actually applying to our feelings, using it to transform the feelings that we have?
Well, I would say that knowing the question 919, which means knowledge, it's the very first step to develop feelings and embrace it accordingly. It may take time, and sometimes we don't follow it like Mariana put it. But that's the very first step. And if we take it seriously, with sincerity, we are on the right pathway.
And that's the issue. Sometimes we just confuse ourselves that knowing the number of the questions is the only step, not the first. I think that's the biggest issue that we face ourselves nowadays.
And I think like it goes even before, like one thing is information, the other one is knowledge, the other one is transformation, right? So even the question 919, I will never forget Larry.
Thank you.
Knowing thyself is way more than information. It's already a whole lot of work. You need to do the mea culpa, right?
Yeah.
You need to put your head on a pillow and you need to breathe. So it's not simple, not even that. And then once you know, you put all the effort to transform. So lots of.
And you use that, and I think what I like, more importantly, you use that to make decisions. One thing is to know 919 and just, yeah, awesome. Then I go to sleep. Yeah, I won't do nothing, but I know I have to do it. But making the decision to reflect, and as you mentioned, the courage to reflect and identify things that we don't like in ourselves, the feelings that need to be changed, that is the practice, right? And that is a discernment that all of us are invited to do so we can really deeply felt and not just memorize.
Because, for example, sorry.
No, sorry. I was gonna say, it goes back to the will that you
Yeah.
showed in the first or second slide. Like doing that reflection relies on having the willingness to do it, right? And it's the willingness is something that you feel.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you need to allow yourself to feel that.
Yes, and I remember last week, during Louis' speech, we talked about Santo Agostinho. I brought it up actually, that he encourages us to, whenever we go to bed, to think it over about the things that I did today, the things that I could have done that would have been better, and what can I do to enhance my behavior for tomorrow,
Exactly.
and thereby becoming a habit and turning that into a habit, otherwise it becomes, fruitless. So yeah, training, habit. So
Yeah.
Santa Agustin came up with this. It's great.
And
Why?
isn't it interesting that the Spiritist movement, most likely in Brazil, is very well known for having the most educated people. If you look at the statistic, is the most educated people are Spiritism. But not all are able to take that intellect that you've been talking about and really apply it.
And I think like when you go first, you know thyself, then you have to love yourself. Otherwise, how can you apply, do unto others what you would like others to do unto you if you don't love yourself? So if I don't like myself, I hurt myself. I can hurt others too. So the second one like doesn't really apply in doing good if I don't do good to myself. So there is a lot of self-work before, right? Like I think it's the start point.
Yeah, it starts with us, absolutely. And to end this text, Kardec says a true Spiritist, which is a famous passage from Spiritism, a true Spiritist is recognized for their moral transformation and by their efforts they make to master their evil inclinations. Again, a knowledge in itself won't turn or won't cause any moral transformation or won't help us master any evil inclinations if we don't make that effort to educate our feelings. They end with, we always succeed in doing this, provided that we remain focused with our will. So provided that we have the knowledge that we acquired, being driven by our will, our nossa vontade, and we have the discipline to do that. And I want to I'm going to show a video, and I've already shown this video before. You remember it. You remember. I used it on Mother's Day, but today I'm going to use it from a different perspective. In this video, I want you to observe how this woman who was struggling, she was going through a struggle with her feelings with God, and how by taking a very logical knowledge, reflecting about it, she was able to transform the rebelliousness and the rage that she was feeling at that time. So, let's see if it works.
Can I sit with you? How's it going?
Sorry, I need to explain it. This is a TV show, a comedy TV show, but the scene is quite powerful. You have here a young little guy who is super smart, doesn't believe in God, but is super smart. Then you have his mom, who's a very devoted Baptist. She works at the church. She's always talking about God. She prays every day before a meal. So very connected with God. But in this day, a 16-year-old daughter that was part of her congregation died from an accident, and she couldn't believe it. And she was feeling angry with God, thinking about how can God allow a 16-year-old daughter be killed in an accident? How does that make sense? How is God loving if He allows such accident to happen? So she was really struggling with her relationship with God. There's some translation here if you can see it.
All right. Mom, I'm scared.
Why?
You didn't go to church, you stop saying grace. I don't understand what's going on.
It's kind of hard to explain.
Is it me? Did I do something wrong?
Of course not. Come here. Sheldon. Faith means believing in something you can't know for sure is real. And right now, I am struggling with that.
So you don't believe in God anymore?
That isn't something for you to worry about. I need to figure this out myself.
Can I help? Maybe I could provide a fresh perspective.
I don't think so, baby.
Did you know that if gravity were slightly more powerful, the universe would collapse into a ball?
I did not.
Also, if gravity were slightly less powerful, the universe would fly apart and there'd be no stars or planets.
Where are you going with this, Sheldon?
It's just that gravity is precisely as strong as it needs to be. And if the ratio of the electromagnetic force to the strong force wasn't 1%, life wouldn't exist. What are the odds that would happen all by itself?
Why are you trying to convince me to believe in God? You don't believe in God.
I don't, but the precision of the universe at least makes it logical to conclude there's a creator.
Maybe I appreciate what you're trying to do. But logic is here. And my problem is here.
Well, there are 5 billion people on this planet and you're the perfect mom for me. What are the odds of that?
Thank you, Lord, for this little boy.
I knew I could fix it.
Maybe it was you and the Lord.
I don't like sharing credit, but I knew in that moment it wasn't the appropriate time to say it.
Which movie is that, you think?
It's a TV show.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's-
Sheldon.
Young Sheldon,
Yeah,
the black hole. Yeah.
so beautiful.
So she was struggling, right, with her relationship with God. So she said herself, I know about God, I know the faith, I practice my relationship with God. It's all here, but her problem was here. And what happened then? You had the little young guy use his knowledge, right, to show in that moment the power of God's love, that God existed and that God was loving because God chose her to be his mom. Right? So how would God not be loving if he chose the perfect mom for him? And in that moment, she immediately transformed the feeling that she was having at that time. Right? That struggle that she had completely changed. Completely changed. And this can be applied to everything. When we're struggling with patience, for example, we can bring God into the mix. We can bring the knowledge that we've acquired, especially here through Spiritism, to that moment. Instead of waiting to do it later. As we find ourselves in that moment of rage, right, in that moment of lack of patience, in that moment of insecurity, if we could stop and bring that knowledge to there and then, in that moment, right? And you can see here that she didn't do it alone. She did it with her son. It could have been a friend. It could have been our guardian angel, right? There's so many things out there that we can use to help us transform those feelings that we know we have and are still a little bit out of control. But they're there for a reason, to show us how we are and what we should do to be better. So it's, again, using that logic to the feelings, and the timing here is impeccable, right? So what made her change her feeling? Right? It was that reflection. It was the knowledge that was transformed into a feeling. And if we read what we just talked about, right, the power of reflection, right, from question 919, what St. Augustine tells us, they're always inviting us to reflect. And the more we reflect, the more we learn about ourselves, the more we'll be able to identify during the time when we are struggling, we'll be able to stop and reassess. We start by doing it later, perhaps late at night before going to bed. That's when we reflect about the things we did throughout the day. But as that becomes a practice, we mature ourselves to the point that when we're struggling with our feelings, there and then we can stop and transform it.
May I add that
Yeah.
we need to be aware of some objectors that might be whispering in our ears as we progress in our pathway towards enlightenment, to leave it aside, don't do it. Then that's when it becomes even a stronger reason to be firm with our prayers.
Absolutely. And if I may add to that, the same way we have those who perhaps don't want our transformation, we have many others that do. And they're whispering on our ears just as much, if not more. Right? So it's our choice to choose which ones we listen to.
If I
Yeah.
may suggest, I don't usually remember everything, but because I watched, I think it was Thursday or Friday evening, there is a documentary on Prime called The Awakening, and I watched very recently. And what caught my attention is like how many more of us are spiritists and not necessarily spirit. And the documentary gets pretty much like three parents that went through the most horrific thing, which is losing their kid. And they are all adult kids, and it shows the picture, like it's really very emotional. And how there is even one dad there that, like, he said, like he was not Christian or he was not religious, and how after losing the kid, like, I can only imagine how horrific and how such pain someone can be. It just transformed his life, and he's meditating. They talk about death as trespassing, like passing or trespassing, and he suddenly became much more connected to the son, and he started writing and getting like mediumship, and at the middle of the night. And then he said that sometimes he couldn't even wake, and he wake up and he apologized to the son, and the son said, "Dad, time is on your side, not on mine. I have all the time in the world." But anyway, they talk, and what it shows is how much like those parents could be stuck in anger, and they are all manifesting gratitude. And it's just like the other one says, like, once I was called and I just came and I knew the police officer came and said, "Your son is gone." She just breathed and she said, "I knew the body wouldn't be vital, but I could feel so much of him there that I just bent on my knees and I started talking to him." So I was like, my goodness, like at the end of the day, there is always a choice to transform feelings and to look at the bright side. So it's beautiful because they talk about the world in 5 dimensions, not only 3D, but 5D. And all of them were transformed to the best about what happened to them.
Yeah.
So there is always possibility.
Yeah, thank you. Bringing the knowledge of reincarnation, for example, and divine justice to our feelings. And as we're saying, we start with the reflection, after the fact, then as we start to do it more and more, we realize during our rages or acts of lack of patience, during that time we realize and we stop and reflect until the point where those won't exist anymore. So that trigger that used to make me lose my mind, that trigger is not there anymore. So I won't lose patience anymore because I've already transformed that feeling using my knowledge. And that's the full circle. And then we can see that once we don't have that trigger anymore, that's what Emmanuel told us. That's when our feelings are controlling our lives, right? The control of our lives, they lie in our feelings. And now we've managed to change that feeling. So we're no longer losing our minds, no longer losing our cool, as people used to say.
Yes, sorry, I'm going to wrap up with one question. When we talk about reflection, and I don't know if my answer is it's related to intention or not, but how do we differ like reflection with overthinking something, being stuck?
Great question.
Great question.
Could you repeat it?
It's
Could you?
not that, right?
I'm sorry.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
reflection.
Yeah.
Can you
So
repeat it,
can you
please? I mean, a little.
Yeah,
Louder.
I'll
Yeah,
say.
yeah, no, I'm just asking like how can we differ reflection from overthinking something? Because many times I get stuck in my thoughts
Right.
and I don't know if I'm making any progress with that or if I'm just wasting my time there. And I don't know if the answer is related somehow to intentionality or whatever.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand like some thoughts and comments there from.
that's a
Good question.
very good question. If I were to answer with some of the things that we saw here today, especially this one, the one that talks about the reflection, it says examining our conscience regarding our own actions. So this is when we reflect about our actions against our conscience, meaning against the divine laws, right? And if we're doing a true reflection, we'll get the answer right away, and we won't overthink about it because we already have the answer. The overthinking is when we're not patient enough to get the answer. Like I'm demanding that answer right away, and so I just keep thinking about it, but I'm not allowing myself to. Oh, thank you.
Is the music for you just it's like the author.
The spirit.
So Ian's mind is very far from
Yeah. Power of the mind.
Exactly. But I would say that it's I think when we let things pile up and we don't reflect it at the right time, when it happened, then we tend to overthink. And the other piece that we can talk about more after, and this can expand quite a bit, is around our own guilt and self-sabotage. That we don't accept that we made a mistake, and then we keep thinking about it. But we'll talk more about it. Yeah, thanks. That's funny. Okay. So we'll do a prayer here with our little ones. Elevating our thoughts and our feelings. And then taking this moment of peace, this moment of rejoice, to truly let this energy, feeling that we're having today, as a waterfall, come through our hearts and clean it and cleanse it, to make us feel the renewal gentleness with ourselves, and to make us feel the courage that yes, we can transform ourselves. And in doing so, this becomes lighter, gentler, and more peaceful. Thank you, Lord, for one more day. And may we keep this harmony of thoughts as we go through our passes and as we go on with our days. So be it.
This will be it.
So now we're going to go through our passes. Maddie will invite you all to come.